Hi everyone, I think we're ready to get started. My name is Sarah Ostman, and on behalf of ALA's Public Programs Office, I'm excited to introduce today's webinar, Serving At-Risk Patrons, Lessons from Library Social Workers. Periodically, we invite different library professionals to present a webinar to share their experiences and insights from their work. Today we're excited to host two social workers from two public library systems. We know that so many libraries serve large homeless populations and other vulnerable patrons, and it can be really difficult to know how best to engage them. So we hope this webinar will give you some ideas about how to work with vulnerable patrons, whether or not you have your own social worker on staff. I'm going to keep my introductions very brief so we can get to the presenters. As I mentioned, today's webinar is a presentation of ALA's Public Programs Office with support from ALA's Cultural Communities Fund. To learn more about the Cultural Communities Fund or make a contribution, visit ala.org/ccf. Hopefully, many of you have heard of our website, programminglibrarian.org. We have lots of program ideas, resources, and an online learning library full of free on-demand webinars. We also send a free e-newsletter twice per month. To sign up, just go to the Programming Librarian homepage and click About. Finally, I have a few notes about our virtual classroom. Only our presenters have microphone access, but you are welcome to type your comments and questions in the chat box. We've saved, we're hoping about 5 to 10 minutes at the end for Q&A, and we will make sure to ask any questions that get asked in the chat box along the way. So feel free to ask questions as you have them. For anyone who's just joined, at the bottom of your screen, you'll see a section marked Resources. These are some materials that you may want to download, including the slides from today's webinar and a couple of handouts the presenters thought might be helpful. You will not need them during today's webinar. If you have any technical issues over the next hour, please send a private message to PPO Super Admin. You'll see PPO Super Admin under Hosts at the upper right corner of your screen. To send a private message, just hover over PPO Super Admin and select Start Private Chat. Finally, this webinar is being recorded, and the archived version will be available on programminglibrarian.org in the section called Learning. Here are today's presenters. First, we're going to hear from Jean Badalamenti, Health and Human Services Coordinator in the Programs and Partnerships Division at DC Public Library. And next up will be Robert Simmons, Manager of Community Resources for Oak Park Public Library in Oak Park, Illinois. I'll start by introducing Jean Badalamenti. Jean has more than 20 years' experience working in DC's human services field. She joined the District of Columbia Public Library in 2014 as Health and Human Services Coordinator in the library's Programs and Partnerships Division, where she works to increase services, programming, and staff training and support related to health and human services. Jean will discuss homelessness in the District of Columbia and DCPL's unique role in the lives of people experiencing homelessness. She will also talk about DCPL initiatives targeting this population and plans for future initiatives serving customers returning from jail or prison, many of whom lack stable living arrangements. With that, I'll turn it over to Jean.
Great, thank you, Sarah. I'm honored to be part of this webinar, and I hope this will be a step toward creating ongoing dialogue amongst systems who are doing this kind of work or thinking of doing this kind of work so we can continue to learn from each other. I first want to, I think it's important to give you some context about homelessness in the District of Columbia. The district has one of the highest rates of homelessness per capita in the country. The January 2016 annual homeless census count showed a total of 8,350 persons experiencing homelessness in the district. With a population of just over 600,000 residents, that means over 13% of residents in the district are experiencing homelessness. The slide you are looking at shows a steady increase in homelessness from 2010 to 2014, and although the numbers dipped a little bit in 2015, 2016 has shown once again a rise in homelessness, particularly among families. This is a real and persistent problem in the city, and it's visible, and libraries play a significant role in assisting those experiencing homelessness and at risk of homelessness. The main library, the Martin Luther King Jr. Memorial Library, and our 26 branches all see varying amounts of customers who are homeless. Our libraries are places of refuge and a lifeline to services for individuals and families who are experiencing homelessness. Libraries are particularly important to the 3,500 individuals who sleep on the streets or stay in shelters during the night. Although the city has a decent system of overnight shelters in place, they do not have a comprehensive daytime shelter system where individuals can access services. So consequently, our library system has filled the gap. In fact, at our main branch, the Martin Luther King Jr. Memorial Library, it serves as a drop-off and pick-up location for shelter residents who are transported from outlying shelters and then brought into the city 7 days a week. So they're picked up in front of the building, they're dropped off in front of the building in the morning and picked up in the evening. So how does this really impact the library? In 2014, when I started at DCPL, I conducted an all-staff survey to get a better picture of the daily experiences staff have with customers who are experiencing homelessness and to find out what kind of information and tools they need to better meet the needs of these individuals. The majority of staff reported that they are, in fact, interacting with customers experiencing homelessness on a daily basis. And most people were looking for a variety of training opportunities to help them support this community. Mental health training, sensitivity training, training about community resources, youth homelessness, and understanding family homelessness. They also gave great suggestions about working more collaboratively with other agencies who are working on issues of homelessness, as well as bringing an on-site social worker at branches to help support customers. So with this information, I have, over the past couple of years, focused on 4 areas that I think have been really important. Unlike some library systems around the country who have hired social workers, I am not doing any direct service work. I do not meet with customers who need services. Again, I work within the Office of Programs and Partnerships, and our goal is to really leverage the resources that already exist in the homeless services community to help support those individuals who need services at our libraries. So the 4 areas I've focused on over the past couple of years involve staff training, strategic partnerships and collaborations, social service information and referral, and something I like to call active engagement. So a little bit quickly about some staff training we've done. We've had a Homelessness 101 training to help staff understand the causes and solutions of homelessness, understand why we see so many people in our community who are homeless and at our libraries, and why it's so difficult to get out of homelessness. This training includes a speaker who has experienced homelessness for 6 years, used our libraries as a day shelter, and now has his own apartment and is working with a homeless services agency. We've had a couple of different kinds of mental health training. We've had trainings for children's librarians on youth homelessness, and a couple of our police officers, who we have our own library police, they have received crisis intervention training, and I'm hoping that in the future we can do more of that for our officers. They play a really important role here at the library and can really support people in crisis. So if you don't have a social worker on staff who's been working in the community for a really long time, where do you find training for staff in your community? I really, like I was said in the with the Homelessness 101 training, love to get people with lived experience of homelessness. You can go to nonprofit community organizations with experience in mental health or homelessness. Continuums of care, these are lead agencies at the state and local level who are addressing the needs of homelessness in your community, and they can offer trainings. Government agencies like the Department of Health, Department of Behavioral Health, Mental Health, and police departments. The second area I've been focusing on is in the area of building partnerships with service providers in order to help people directly in our buildings get to services they need. On the left part of your screen are some of the partners we have in the community, folks who do nonprofits who do street outreach, organizations that work with veterans, that work with youth, and legal services organizations. One partnership that I want to highlight that I think is particularly innovative has been what I call the Mount Service Providers Roundtable at the Mount Pleasant Branch Library. About a year ago, the branch manager at that library contacted me and was really frustrated because they were barring a lot of people from the library, many of whom were homeless. And she was looking for alternatives to kicking people out. She wanted to engage with people more. So we decided that we would bring together some different service providers right close to that branch library. I reached out to folks. We had an initial meeting about a year ago, and nothing ever really happened after that. So the branch manager got in contact with me again, and we tried again and have increased the number of people who are part of this roundtable. And now for the past 5 months, we've been meeting as a group, mostly nonprofit, church providers, library staff, our public safety staff, and some housing. There's a housing organization that houses individuals who are homeless right from the street. And so they've been part of this ongoing conversation right very locally to help support the work we do and all the service providers and the customers that come into the library who are probably being seen throughout this community. One thing that's happened, which I think is just really interesting, is a librarian from that branch, a woman was there really agitated and experiencing some mental health issues. So the librarian called over to one of the service providers that is part of this roundtable. The service provider walked 2 blocks over, met with this woman, kind of calmed her down, gave some tips to the librarian about how she can work with this woman, and then proceeded to run into one of their clients. The social worker ran into a client they hadn't seen in a long time, and so she was able to reconnect. Really, everybody in this community, the local community there, is working with the same people, so we might as well be talking to each other. If you're not, I'm going to go back. Again, if you're not a social worker and you're looking to build partnerships and relationships with providers, I think the best place to start is word of mouth. Ask your customers who are experiencing homelessness where they go for services. They know good organizations and they can talk to you about that. Let agencies know that you have meeting room space they can use for trainings and meetings, and that's a first way to start a dialogue. Keep it as local as possible. Reach out to providers close to where branches are that see a lot of customers who are homeless. Be proactive, make the call, arrange the meeting. We're all busy, but if you put it out there that you want to talk to people, I think service providers will be interested. And then get involved in the broader community conversation about ending and addressing the needs of people who are homeless. I sit on the Interagency Council on Homelessness here in the district and part of the Emergency Response and Shelter Operations Committee. And these are citywide conversations, and the library is at the table. I think it's really important to make it known that you want to be part of this conversation. The other area we've worked on over the past couple of years is around information and referral. This has been one of the harder areas for me to get my head around, but we've done a couple of things at the library to get frontline staff information about social services. We developed a prototype of an online tool for institutions like libraries and churches that aren't regular social service providers to try to help them figure out how to refer people to the services they need. We have used online tools created by other providers and written cards distributed from other providers, and hoping to use our internal DCPL website to get information to frontline staff about services that are available in the community. And then one thing I think is really important, and you all know this, is The library in our community, I feel like, is one of the last places people can access without showing ID or having to buy something. And I think this makes the library an incredibly important institution, especially for communities that don't have financial resources. And the library has an opportunity to really actively engage people, meet them where they're at, and help support them in their lives in different ways. And many frontline staff are comfortable with actively engaging with people, and it comes easy, but many it doesn't, and that's okay. But I think it's important that if we're providing people with safe spaces, that we're also actively engaging with them. I use this quote I wrote up here. A friend of mine from an old organization I work with oftentimes says, "We gain an understanding of belonging through the dignity of being welcomed. Being welcomed and belonging are the catalysts for change." So when I'm talking to librarians and library frontline staff, I always tell them, welcome people when you see them, particularly those who are homeless. Create a community space to combat social isolation. Homeless individuals are very socially isolated. They feel stigmatized, and the library can really be a place where they do feel welcome. And then to work from a place of empathy and compassion. And what we've done in order to operationalize this concept of active engagement at our libraries is we've launched a coffee and conversation program. This is not something I came up with. The Dallas Public Library has been doing coffee and conversation at their main branch for probably over a year now, and I happened to be part of a webinar where they were talking about it. And we currently have a coffee and conversation program at our main library and 7 of our branches, and we'll be bringing on a new branch in August. And really, coffee and conversation is a program where people who are experiencing homelessness and others can come together to meet, mingle, hear from a speaker, make new friends, talk about important issues of the day, do a craft. And really, this kind of program, I think, builds bridges between the housed and the unhoused community and builds trust between customers without homes and staff. And again, it's a way to help break down that social isolation that many people experiencing homelessness have. Again, it's just it's an effort to invite customers who are experiencing homelessness into a group and to meet each other and maybe share their gifts and talents and stories of their lives. So how do we reach these customers who are experiencing homelessness to be part of coffee and conversation? We've chosen times during the day when we know people who are homeless are in our libraries. I really talk a lot about this. Again, it's about engaging and communicating with people on an ongoing basis. It's not just about telling people about the program the day of. I'm sure there's staff members who are really great with chatting up and engaging with some of the folks who are homeless in your systems, and we really try to keep the dialogue and conversation ongoing. Do active outreach and invitation on the day of the program. We use our loudspeaker to make announcements, put up flyers, and ask participants to who come to coffee and conversation to help plan topics, to give presentations. One of our customers who spends a lot of time in our fabrication lab gave a presentation on the work he does. He makes jewelry out of a laser cutter and was talking about that. He stays at a shelter, so why not have him give a presentation? And then share the program flyer with other homeless service providers in the community. Another thing I'm hoping we can do more of here at DCPL is to create more community conversations about the issue of homelessness at our branches. Recently, I did a training along with a partner for a student group, a class of 5th graders. We talked about homelessness in the community, did a service project at the branch we were at, talked about why there's so many people at libraries who are homeless. And I think this kind of thing is really important, and the library is a great space to teach people about this issue, maybe get them activated to take action in your community about homelessness. In addition to my work with customers experiencing homelessness, I also manage our library at the DC jail. We have 2 staff people who provide service to 1,000 inmates at the jail, and this we provide mobile library service, and we opened about a year ago. And so we're really focused on connecting library services for returning citizens and ramping up what we do for these folks. This summer, we're going to be launching a pilot project at the jail where when people are leaving the jail, inmates are getting ready to be released, we will be offering library cards that will be activated within 5 days. They can take them with them, also with a list of our branches and a list of the services we think they might be interested in. And we're also going to be launching a family engagement and learning initiative. This will be something hopefully we'll do through the whole system, but we're really thinking about it and going to be piloting it with returning citizens and partnering with some organizations that work with people who are returning. The library is a great place where families can come together, and for those who are returning from jail or prison can reconnect with their families. So just to wrap up, after having worked at DCPL for just over 2 years, I'm struck by how aligned librarians and social workers are in the work that they do. Librarians are wanting to help people get information to improve their lives in a variety of ways, and social workers really want to do the same thing, but really focused on basic human needs. And I just think there's a huge potential for more community collaboration between librarians and social service professionals, and I think there's things we haven't even considered. So hoping we can continue talking and learning from each other. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Jean. Remember, we will have time for a Q&A at the end of the presentation, so if you do have questions for Jean, feel free to type them in the chat box, and we'll come back to them after Rob's presentation. Next up, we're going to hear from Rob Simmons of the Oak Park Public Library. Rob is very new at Oak Park Public Library. He started in March 2016 when the library first created its social worker position, but he has a lot of experience in social work. He worked as 10 years as a social worker for Oak Park Township, where he developed youth programs and provided intervention services for thousands of youth. Earlier this year, Rob was recognized by the McDonald's Corporation as one of 24 social service providers nationwide that are having significant social impact in their communities. So Rob, I will turn it over to you.
Thank you very much, Sarah. It's definitely a pleasure and honor to be able to have the platform given by ALA to talk about our program and some of the things that we're doing here at Oak Park Public Library to serve our most vulnerable patrons. It's also been a pleasure to be able to work with my colleague Jean in DC, and I've learned a lot about some of the things that they are doing, and I'm also looking forward to integrating some of the things that they do into our daily practices here. As Sarah mentioned, I just started in March 2016 as our Manager of Community Resources here at Oak Park Public Library. We've been working very hard to build and integrate a social service model into a public library setting, and we've had a lot of success thus far in a short period of time. This model has enabled us to really provide about 73 patrons with comprehensive services since March 2016, and I feel really good about that, and I think we'll be able to have a bigger impact as we move forward in building our integrated model here. The goal of today for me is not only to be able to describe to you our program, but I really want to provide a paradigm where you'll be able to integrate and learn some of the things we're doing here into the things that you're doing at your respective libraries. Today I'm going to discuss the unique geographic location of Oak Park Public Library in Oak Park, and then also explain how those factors influence how we identify, engage, and then also serve our most vulnerable patrons here at the library. At the end of my presentation, we will have the opportunity for a question and answer session. Oak Park is located 9 miles west of downtown Chicago. This region of the Chicagoland area is very unique because you have some of the wealthiest communities neighboring some of the most under-resourced communities in the country. Oak Park is 4.7 square miles and has about 54,000 residents, and it's a very urban environment. Oak Park has a very diverse demographic population and is one of the most highly desirable areas to live, not only in the Chicagoland area, but in the country. Our main library is centrally located downtown Oak Park, and it has our highest volume of patrons out of our 3 library branches. At any given day, we have about 6 to 7 communities that use our libraries. There are 10 homeless shelters within 3 miles of the main branch. And an interesting thing about the homeless shelters is that they are open from September to May and closed from May to September. And when they're open, the hours of operation are 7:30 p.m. to 6:45 a.m. So it really presents a situation where the service model really, there's not a lot of opportunities for people to receive comprehensive services, particularly if they're experiencing homelessness. According to a local homeless advocacy organization called Heartland Alliance, they had just released some 2015 data that said that over 2,700 Oak Park families are experiencing extreme homelessness and poverty. And what that means is that these families have an annual income of about $9,000 a year or less. Also in 2015, 1 in 5 Oak Park renters spend about 50 to 60% of their income on rent, which is really, really high. And those rents for those units, we're talking about families paying about $800 to $1,200 a month for that rent. So we have 20% of Oak Parkers that are really experiencing some really strain and financial hardship. 469 of Oak Park residents needed assistance avoiding imminent homelessness in 2015. We serve a high percentage of this population, families and individuals that are really at risk and in imminent danger of becoming homeless. Since March, our social service model has provided support and advocacy in the following areas. Homelessness, addiction, unemployment, and affordable housing are the issues that we deal with the most here since I've been here in March. Many of our vulnerable patrons require social service advocacy and support in many of these areas. So it's really been a challenge to find a lot of programming, preventative programming, because of the lack of state and local funding. The capacity for a lot of social service agencies has really been minimized in the past 4 or 5 years, and that's not exclusive to our Oak Park area, but that paradigm really exists across the country. The past 2 years, our library has been engaged in a strategic planning process that emphasizes community engagement, learning, and stewardship. I really believe that this process positioned the library to think really outside the box and hire a social worker. Right now, I am engaged in the Harwood process as a practitioner and being trained by Harwood Institute. And what that does is really the Harwood Institute and methodology really positions individuals and organizations to become public innovators. Really positioning them to identify community needs and really come up and create specific interventions that have social impacts. All of our leadership staff here are Harwood practitioners, and I believe that this paradigm and this focus has really made it really easy kind of to integrate a social service model just because there's been a strategic focus behind it. And I would really recommend if your organization is thinking about hiring a social worker or really trying to brainstorm on how to make that happen, make it a part of your strategic plan. What that does is really create buy-in not only from staff, administration, but other key stakeholders such as the board of trustees, and also other community members. Our social service models entails 4 components. The first is outreach. The second is safety and security. The third is training. And our fourth is around strategic partnerships. These 4 components create a comprehensive continuum of care for our vulnerable patrons. and it is really working for our vulnerable patrons. Like I said, that's a high number. 73 people has received social service support since March. I was really not prepared for kind of the volume of individuals and families that needed social services support. So I really feel good that we now have an integrated model and a better infrastructure to serve our most vulnerable patrons. Myself and our community resources specialists provide all of the outreach services to our patrons at all 3 branches. Our community resources specialist, Stephen Jackson, just started with us last week, and we're really excited to have him here with us. We do not provide any direct social service counseling or anything of that nature, but we really identify the need through our outreach efforts and connect our patrons to appropriate services within the community. As I mentioned, our model has served about 73 patrons with comprehensive social services support since March of 2016. About 45% of our referrals come from staff. Our staff do a great job of building relationships with our patrons here, and they make a point to not only just build relationships, but they've done a great job of identifying individuals and families who may need social service support, and then they connect those individuals and families to our program for social service support. 35% of our referrals come from our outreach efforts. This has really been great and had a big impact on our organization as far as having an outreach model. It's been nice to be able to work with our staff and patrons all together to be able to come up with sound strategies to best help individuals, especially in vulnerable situations. 15% of our walk-ins come to us as far as referrals, and what I mean by that is that now people are starting to recognize that there is social service support here in our organization, and there are people that actually walk right up to my office and ask for help, and I really feel good about that, and I'm anticipating that number will increase as we continue to build our program here. Other is 5% of referrals that come in, and what I mean by that is that there are teachers, people in the community, even parents that actually contact me and call to give me a heads up that either they're a student or their son or daughter who frequents our facilities, a lot, they may need an extra level of support. So they've actually taken the time to contact me directly to make sure that those individuals get what they need. And we're also anticipating that there'll be referrals that come in that manner. We respect the privacy of all of our patrons. It's very important to us. All of my reporting that goes to our executive director, David Sellup, focuses on trends and data, but it doesn't give any identifying information about our patrons. We do not share patron information with staff, and we only share information with appropriate referral sources. It's very important because that confidentiality and respecting that will continue to help us build trust with our patrons here. Our safety and security monitors became in-house in June 2016. Prior to that, we outsourced to a company, and we really didn't have the leverage to train them with the best practice engagement methods. I feel really good now because our safety and security monitors will be trained in trauma-informed care, mental health first aid, and we have an officer safety training that's offered by Oak Park Police Department that our safety and security monitors will be trained in as well. Staff have received what I like to refer to as 2 social work one-on-one trainings that have helped them become familiar with trauma and mental health issues. I facilitated a trauma-informed care training in June, and it went really well. And I really want to emphasize that the trauma-informed training is not designed to enable librarians to become social workers. It's really designed to help people identify if someone is in distress and how to safely link them to support without re-traumatizing them. And that's a key point, is that, trauma-informed training and then the mental health training, which I'm going to describe shortly, they're just basically used to give baseline information. There are 6 key principles to trauma-informed care. The first one being safety, and how we think about safety is this: you think safety first before you engage with any patron. You have to respect safety and always value that first before you engage. It's important to be able to assess the situation and make sure that safety is prioritized. Trustworthiness and transparency is a second principle that's key. And how we articulate that here is that you do what you say and don't provide empty promises. So it's very important that when we're engaging with our patrons that, we're coming up with good strategies and sound strategies that are realistic and that do not set them up to be re-traumatized. Peer support. How we work with peer support here is that the safest way to engage with any patron, especially experiencing trauma, is that it's okay to team up, to use, have a colleague, call someone for support. Never engage alone. Collaboration and being mutual is very important also. We work with our patrons very closely, and we value their input because their input is most important in figuring out the best strategies to give them support. Our empowerment, voice, and choice principles of trauma-informed care is very interesting. We ultimately value and realize that patrons have the ultimate say about their care and about any outcomes that they want in their life. We really prioritize that and really live by that principle. The last principle, cultural, historical, and gender issues, what that really does is help us and organizations recognize that bias, discrimination, and inequities contribute to trauma. Mental health first aid is another training that has been beneficial to our staff. Social service organizations and mental health professionals offer free mental health first aid training throughout the country. The fact that mental health first aid is a national best practice training model, there are a lot of organizations possibly in your area or region that have grant money to be trained, and then they use those monies also to go into the community and train individuals and actually organizations for free on mental health first aid training. And I think that there may be some resources too. There's a mental illness and homelessness organizations list provided in the webinar, and you'll be able to find some resources for mental health first aid training. Our strategic partnerships have played a significant role in providing direct social services and resources to our vulnerable patrons. Since I've been here in March, we have had some very, very successful collaborative efforts that have taken place. We work closely with 2 community social service agencies, and we're also part of a coalition. Housing 4 provides street outreach on site to our patrons once a week, and they also provide a lunch program here in the summer. Those resources are very, very important, especially because there is not as much social service support and coverage for individuals experiencing homelessness in the summer months. So this has been very beneficial to not only our organization, but also to our patrons. We also work closely with an organization called Parenthesis. They provide outreach and support on site to our families, and there are about 7 or 8 families right now that I am collaborating with the organization in order to provide a continuum of care of support for those individuals. Oak Park Public Library has been part of the Oak Park Housing Coalition for at least 3 or 4 years, maybe even more. So they were part of that coalition before I even started here. And the coalition meets quarterly, and they have a strategic plan now where they would like to eradicate homelessness, really within the next 5 years or so. And how they define eradicating homelessness is they want to be able to create a situation where there are more beds available for people than people who need them. And I know that Seattle and New Orleans and a couple other pockets across the country have actually alleviated homelessness in that matter, where there's actually more beds available than people that need them, which I think is awesome. Another strategic partnership that was really, really beneficial to us is our work with University of Chicago's nursing program. I coordinated a collaboration with 2 nursing students, and they work closely with our health and wellness librarian, Susan McClellan. Back in April, I think it was, they came to our organization. They came twice actually. They showed 2 documentaries on needle exchange programs. And what I really liked about this collaborative effort is that there was rehabilitation services around recovery that was offered to our patrons off-site, and that was really, really good. And a resource like that is really hard to find, but local universities have a lot of resources free when it comes to even internships, and also a lot of interesting programs that are focused to have a social impact, where you can have definitely be able to look at local universities in order to find a resource such as that. We also work closely with our local government entities. Oak Park Police Department has been very, very awesome and a partner for us. They are the resident beat officers, frequent our facilities, all three, at least several times a day, and are in contact with myself and other staff members to make sure that things are safe here in our facilities. They're also, Oak Park Police Department will be training our safety and security monitors on a program that they have called Officer Safety Training. That training will be provided for free to us, and we'll probably be doing that in August or September, and I'm looking forward to that. Another local government partner that we work closely with is Oak Park Township. They provide youth services, senior services, and general assistance. Youth services, you know, I've connected some of our youth to scholarships and also some outreach work in the community that they do as well. Senior services has lunch programs, transportation, legal advocacy, and all kind of comprehensive program for seniors. And then the general assistance provides services and financial support to individuals, not families, but just individuals who need financial support. You know, ultimately creating a welcoming environment sets up the best opportunity to engage with vulnerable patrons. Here at Oak Park Public Library, we create welcoming environments by living with principles of Wakaija, is how you pronounce it. I'm a part of a committee that meets quarterly, and we discuss ways that we can promote safe and welcoming environments, especially when engaging with vulnerable patrons. And this committee was in place before I started. They just happened to be having a quarterly meeting in March when I first started. I was invited to that meeting, and I was really, really impressed that the organization really was you know, had some intentionality behind creating welcoming environments. In those meetings, we discuss training opportunities and other strategies that will help us achieve this goal of creating welcoming environments. There's also a lot of information about Wakaija principles and projects and information online that people can look on. And there's also the principles are available for you via a Word document here at our webinar. I've come to the conclusion of my presentation. I really enjoyed talking about some of the wonderful things we've been doing in the short period of time I've been here. I really hope that there were some takeaways that you can use and pretty much integrate into your daily practices right away. I'm available via email. You can give me a call. But I really want to be able to be available for people who have questions. I think it's very, very important that we keep the dialogue open on how we can all work together to provide the best services for our vulnerable patrons. With that being said, I'd like to thank everyone for tuning in today, and I'll now turn it over for Sarah for a question and answer session.
Thanks so much, Rob. And just a note that actually I will put the slide up right now. We have contact information for Jean and Rob on the screen, and I know Rob just said he's welcome to take questions, interested in taking your questions by email if you have them later, and I believe Jean is open to that as well. But we do have some time now for questions. I will start us off with a question for Jean. Jean, this was asked in regard to your program where you're distributing library cards to people leaving jail or prison. And the question was from Deirdre, and she asked, how do you handle library cards for people without addresses?
So that's a great question. When people, well, I'll just start. When people who are homeless who come to the library who want a library card, we ask if they're staying at a shelter, we'll ask them to provide a letter from the shelter provider that, in fact, they're staying there. If people are living on the street, many people might have some connection with a street outreach organization, and we'll try to ask them to bring something that says that they're staying at the corner of 10th and I Northwest. so we can help them that way. When people, we haven't started the pilot program at the jail yet with the library cards, so what we'll be doing is just asking people for their address on the application form, and we'll go from there. It's something we want to be able to offer people because we want to bring in as many people into the library as possible. So we're going to see how it goes. For district residents.
Thanks, Jean. Question here for Rob from Sharon. Sharon says, if you do direct casework, how do you measure the effectiveness of your outreach efforts?
I'm sorry, you cut back a little bit. I didn't hear the first part.
Can you hear me now? Is that better?
Yes. Yes.
Sharon asked, if you don't do direct casework at your library, how do you measure the effectiveness of your outreach efforts?
So there is an evidence-based best practice way that I actually track my data, and then also we have a way of, even though we don't do direct case management per se, we actually have a way of being able to follow. Thus far since March, we've been able to follow the process that once they we connect someone to an organization or whatever, then I do a job. I always have follow-up with those organizations about kind of what happened, what the results were, and kind of where what position that individual or family is in now. And there's ways that I can extract data on my end to make sure that our referral streams are well and sound, and also that our strategic partners their delivery is intact, if that makes sense.
Thanks. Jean, did you have anything to add to that about measuring effectiveness of your outreach?
No, we've been tracking, how many our partners and how many people they're seeing, and I think I hate to. It's going to sound crazy, but the library isn't ending people's homelessness. We're really trying to get people connected with services and support their life. And I think it's difficult sometimes to track, to track that information. Like, they keep coming in and we keep seeing them, but sometimes people get housing, sometimes they don't. And I guess that's my real service, the end of the line where people are moving to, but that's not something we really track here.
Yeah, and I also like to add also is that it's harder to track success when we have a patron that we see maybe once or twice, or two engagements, maybe one. It's harder to track effectiveness, but I would say a large percentage of the 73 people that we've been able to impact in positive ways. We've been able to follow up with them to see how things are going and be able to track information in that manner too, and that's been helpful to be able to measure our effectiveness.
We have another question for Rob here. This one is from Kathleen, and it's about your safety and security monitors. She asked, do you have job expectations and training specifically for the safety and security monitors? And she says she has similar positions and would love to add this value to what they do.
Oh, absolutely. So our safety and security monitors will be trained in trauma-informed care, also mental health, first aid, and then our Oak Park Police Department offers officer safety training, and they will be training our safety and security staff sometime at the end of August or early September on various methods when it comes to providing safety in large environments, particularly.
Thank you. Rebecca had a question. Actually, let's go with Rebecca. She said, with regard to outreach, what are some of your sound strategies for outreach when a vulnerable patron maybe doesn't have a relationship with staff? And Rob, she asked specifically about, you mentioned buddying up for initial engagement.
Yes. So, if you don't personally have a relationship with a patron that you may see needs some type of support, ask another staff member if they're familiar with them, or even a patron. Sometimes it depends, but I think that assess the situation. It may take one or two times if it's a regular patron for you to be able to assess, and then also there's an opportunity for you to introduce yourself, build a relationship, and then present or introduce some resources to that person. But there are opportunities that we that are available every day to engage with patrons, just by introducing yourself, saying hi, how are you doing, what's your name, things of that nature. So being able to just introduce yourself is key.
Hi, this is Jean. Can I just piggyback on what Rob said? And part of what I am, this concept of active engagement with people, it doesn't mean, this isn't Walmart. Hi, how are you today? Blah, blah, blah. This is a slow process of maybe getting to know people. Hi, welcome to the library, and move on. People aren't going to immediately begin a trusting relationship necessarily with you, but I think if you're able to sort of, I'd also even call it hospitality. The idea that you're here and we want you to be here and we want to welcome you, and then slowly I think a trusting relationship can happen, and then people can maybe share their needs. It might not happen immediately. That's a really kind of street outreach model, but it's proven to be effective when working with people who are homeless and living on the street.
Thanks. Here's a question from Rachel. Have you seen much in the way of compassion fatigue from staff involved in your programs and initiatives? And that can go to either of you.
I think our staff have compassion fatigue. And I talk about that with people. Elisa Hardy, who is on this, she's a social worker in Denver, and she does a resiliency training, and I'm hoping that that's something we can institute here for staff. I think people get overwhelmed, but for me, it's what do you have inside you to help you move through the day and have good life balance, and how can we support you in your workplace, knowing that you're coming into contact with lots of people who are really struggling in their lives.
Yes, and in my safety and security staff and my community resources specialists, they just started, so I don't think they have any fatigue yet. They may, but the rest of our staff, from time to time, we work closely with staff, as I mentioned, and it's being in a customer service industry is very, very difficult a lot of times. And yes, there are staff that experience compassion fatigue, but there are a lot of resources available through Learn While You Earn opportunities, which we have here, that gives staff a lot of opportunities to engage in maybe some self-care training and things of that nature. We also have, I remember when I first started here, there's actually a room you can go to kind of just, take a nap or chill out, and I thought that was actually really, really cool. So, there are things here that we have in our daily practices and also resources or whatever that our staff can use if they're feeling fatigued.
Samantha asked, any suggestions for getting timid teens or youth to come to programming on this theme? A lot of times there's stigma attached to this, she said.
On what theme? Sorry.
Yeah.
Maybe Samantha can write in the chat box and clarify. It looks like she's typing right now. In the meantime, why don't we go to a different question? And this should be a quick one. Jean and Rob, how do you handle library accounts that are badly in arrears?
I have to say I cannot answer that question.
Yep. Me either.
That's okay. Here's another question. Jean, can you talk a little bit more about Social Work 101? Are all staff trained in that?
We do, the Homelessness 101 program that we have.
Yes, I think that's right.
Yeah. None of the trainings that I offer are mandatory, so as many people as want to can come. I'd love it to be a mandatory program at DCPL, but it's not right now. And I think as many direct service or frontline staff as possible could come would be great.
And speaking of frontline staff, we had another question from Kate, who asked, what role does frontline staff play in your work overall? Do they participate in planning or in other ways?
So we had a homeless task force here at DCPL, and we don't meet anymore, but frankly I loved having them. They were frontline staff who cared about customers who were experiencing homelessness. We did some focus groups with some of our customers. I asked them about what kinds of programs that they would like. That's really how we decided to take the coffee and conversation model and implement it here at DCPL, was through some of these focus groups. And so they were really important group of people when I first started here. And unfortunately, we don't meet now. I would love to have kind of a task force on mental health here at DCPL and staff a little bit about some programming and ideas for understanding and helping support mental health in our libraries.
Let's go back to the question from Samantha. Samantha had asked, any suggestions for getting timid teens or youth to come to programming about homelessness or about services to, I'm assuming, homeless teens? And how do you get over that stigma working with young people who are experiencing homelessness?
Well, I think I can take a shot at that. Since I've been here in March, the outreach piece is really I can't score the importance of that. So since March, I've been able to build a lot of strong relationships because teens see me every day, and we engage with teens, and they're really intentional about building those relationships. So I think that if we had a training or something on homelessness, especially for teens and even teens that may be experiencing homelessness, because I have that relationship, and it's taken a while. I mean, for some kids it was easy for me to engage with, but it's taken months on the other hand, for me to be able to build relationships with some of those teens. But building those relationships will help with being able to introduce any kind of activity or program that you want to introduce to those teens. Building relationships is key. And like Jean mentioned before, it's not like at Walmart where it's just a hello and just, hello, a brief hello, but really being intentional about making sure that, you engage every day, especially with groups of teens that are at, that frequent with your facilities that you see every day, not just ignoring them, but being intentional of making sure that that they're here, they're welcome, you say hello, and things of that nature. So the engagement piece is huge.
Jean, did you want to add anything to that, or should we move on to, I think, one last question?
We don't do anything, we haven't tried anything specifically for homeless teens at our library. One thing we're going to hopefully be doing a little bit more of, the city is doing a census of homeless youth, unaccompanied minors, in September, and I'm working with the Department of Human Services and the folks that are organizing that to figure out how the library can be involved in that census, and I think that will help give us an understanding of here at our libraries who is experiencing homelessness in terms of youth. I mean, we have a sense, but we don't really know. All we know is generally we know youth use the library for a safe space. In terms of other youth learning about issues of homelessness in the community. We have a sort of an internship Teens of Distinction program, and we've brought in speakers to talk about homelessness. And the training I did for the school group was through a school, so it wasn't just an open program on homelessness.
Thank you both. Unfortunately, we are out of time. It is, we're at the hour mark, so we're going to have to wrap up now. But I want to thank both of you for being such excellent presenters and thank our wonderful attendees who had so many questions. And I'm sorry that we didn't get through all of them. But Jean and Rob, would you be open to answering questions by email if someone wanted to contact you individually?
Absolutely.
Sure.
Absolutely.
Great. Please note their email addresses on the screen. And thank you again for joining us for this Programming Librarian webinar. And hope we will see you at another one in the future.
Hello?